Good evening. Thanks for joining us. February 4th was Ipchun, which means the onset of spring. Some Koreans celebrate this day by writing messages of good tidings and prosperity for the coming year, in the hopes that doing so will drive away evil spirits and bring good fortune. We wish all of you in Korea and the best of luck and a very happy 2006. This is Multilingual Migrant Worker News for the second week of February. Our top story, a recent court decision has declared migrant worker unions illegal. As of last year, establishing a migrant worker union was not allowed because of the unresolved controversy surrounding cases of undocumented workers joining the union. Migrant workers in Incheon have filed a lawsuit against the Seoul Regional Labor Office to allow the establishment of migrant worker unions, which would only include documented migrant workers. However, on February 7th, the Seoul Administrative Court ruled against the plaintiff. Migrant worker organizations have responded to the decision, saying that since the Supreme Court has already publicly recognized that undocumented migrant workers are in fact workers, organizing a migrant worker union is a basic right. Earlier this year, the Ministry of Justice announced their intention to hold a conference on the rights of foreign workers and ways to improve their lives. Working with civil rights organizations, the conference took place on February 8th. Among the objectives of the conference was finding ways to make the Korean legal system more accessible to migrant workers and making it easier for them to stay in the country. In the future, migrant workers can apply to the Korean Legal Aid Corporation to assist them in collecting unpaid wages and have representatives act on their behalf in legal proceedings if they are compelled to leave the country for any reason. The Ministry of Justice reported that a 13 billion won balance in late payments owed to over 12,000 registered foreign laborers was recently settled. The average balance owed per worker was around 1 million won. Laborers from China represented the largest group of recipients at 5,564, followed by 1,305 from Bangladesh and 943 from Vietnam. The Migrant Worker Trade Union estimated that the amount of late payments to be nearly 40 billion won, which is over 3 times as much as the recently settled payments. In light of this, the MTU has insisted that the Korean government take a more active role in solving this problem. While the Ministries of Justice and Labor work toward a solution for unpaid worker wages, migrant workers continue to suffer the consequences of having little or no protection under the law. Earlier this month, Durahim from Indonesia led his group of friends to their employer to demand payment in full of their unpaid wages. In response, their employer sent them to the Immigration Bureau, which found they were not registered and subsequently deported them. In a similar case, on February 7th, John from Uzbekistan approached the police to file a complaint against his boss for unpaid wages. Instead of investigating the complaint, the police referred him to the Immigration Bureau, which promptly deported him back to Uzbekistan. Civil rights groups have condemned the police for luring John to the police station with false promises of security only to have him deported. A February 8th court ruling has left the migrant worker community both shocked and appalled at a seemingly blatant miscarriage of justice. The case involved one Mr. Hong charged with defrauding a man from Nepal who was participating in the industrial trainee program. The Nepalese man, who worked for an export company here in Korea, charged that Mr. Hong had unlawfully seized goods worth 56 million won, a charge that resulted in the arrest and prosecution of Mr. Hong. But what first appeared to be an open and shut case went oddly awry when the court ruled the victim's statement not reliable and the evidence against Mr. Hong to be inadequate. Mr. Hong was acquitted of all charges. The ruling has left many to accuse the Korean courts of being unjustly biased against foreigners. On February 12th, the Ansan Migrant Workers Center launched their Impassion campaign on behalf of the children of migrant workers. At a rally held at Maronie Park in Daehangno, organizers spelled out the need for these children to be granted permanent residency status. The children of migrant workers are currently considered illegal residents, rendering them ineligible for public education or even medical treatment. This illegal status even extends to children born within Korea. Groups like the Ansan Migrant Workers Center have long argued for reform of residency laws so that children and youth are allowed to remain in the country legally and afforded basic human rights while they are here. In a related story, some children of migrant workers may soon receive schooling under a new government effort to reach out to children of lower income and marginalized families. Under this new program, some marginalized youth, including those who are biracial or the children of migrant workers, may soon be eligible for special educational opportunities. The Ministry of Education and Human Resources has announced it will be spending 8 billion won over 5 years for children whose life circumstances unfairly deny them basic schooling. Officials say part of this program will include Korean as a second language programs in elementary schools for children of migrant workers. The ministry also announced an educational program for Korean women who are married outside of the country and have returned with children. The program, which will be tried first in Daegu with 600 participants, will focus on reinforcing the children's cultural identity. We end tonight's broadcast with some good news for ethnic Koreans born and living in China or Russia. Beginning this July, the Ministry of Justice announced it would establish and issue H-2 visas for 267 ethnic Koreans in those two countries. The H-2 visas, ministry officials say, will allow the select few to freely travel to and from Korea and work in the country for the next 5 years. The February 9th announcement was good news to those Koreans in China and Russia who had no connections to Korea and until now were unable to live here. Under the H-2 visa, the maximum allowable period of employment is 2 years, but re-entry into the country resets the clock and gives them another 2 years. At this time, recipients of an H-2 visa may work in construction, the service industry, or several other industries. But justice officials say H-2 holders will soon be allowed to work in manufacturing, agriculture, stock breeding, and fishing. And that's all for Migrant Worker Multilingual News. Multilingual Migrant Worker News is broadcast every other week. You can watch the news broadcast from our website at www.mwtv.or.kr or www.rtv.or.kr. We hope you'll tune in again. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Until then, good night.